Perfect. Okay.
So,
good morning, everybody. Hope you can hear me well. We'll just wait a minute or so before we start. Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me. Hope you can see me well and certainly hear and see the slides well, which is the most important thing. So first of all, welcome to Kornit's webinar. My name is Phil Oakley. I'm the sales manager for the UK and Ireland for Kornit, and happy you were able to join me. So today I'd like to cover the e-commerce journey, which actually for me is quite a personal one over the last 20 years. We're going to touch on its various aspects. So we'll talk about before COVID-19, and obviously the e-commerce journey started way before. We'll talk about not just after, but during, because we're certainly not through it on the other side yet. We'll look at the implications with regards to e-commerce, and then touch on 3 stages to transform your business. If you're already a digital business, even there's other parts that still can be transformed to a digital business in this unusual situation. So first, kind of let's touch on before COVID-19. Now, interestingly, reflecting back 21 years ago, I was at the time working in a startup company known as a .com startup, in a .com bubble, and at the time was selling to customers the peace of mind from taking what was then their server, which was actually a tower PC predominantly under people's desks, connected to the internet, but only really through dial-up. Can you remember that? So less than really 22, 23 years ago, we were only connecting to the internet through dial-up. And that's where e-commerce really started. Actually, you think of e-commerce, Amazon started in 1994. So this is going way back if you're looking at this e-commerce journey. And actually people then you could have a permanent connection to the internet. And in the UK back then, a permanent connection to the internet of a 1 megabit connection, think of it, 1 megabit, was around $28,000. So we've come a long way in that e-commerce journey. So before we kind of go forward, let's look at and define what is e-commerce as a common language. Electronic commerce. The activity of electronically buying or selling products online, services online, or over the internet. The e-commerce is much more than that, as I'm sure we'd all agree. First and foremost, it's about accessing the internet, accessing a digital platform, whether that's via your PC, whether that's your laptop. But most, and I'm sure a lot of you today are accessing this webinar via your mobile, not just for voice, but for video and everything else. But e-commerce then is much more than that. It's the electronic funds that you're going to transfer if you purchase something. It's the internet marketing, the search engine optimization. It's also then the supply chain management once you've purchased a product, the online transaction processing, the electronic data interchange of what is it you're purchasing, where does it need to be delivered, what stock is it coming from, the inventory management systems, ERP systems that I posted an article yesterday, which shows how sophisticated some inventory management systems could be. And then the data collection and reuse of all that data. That is e-commerce. And so in the last 20 plus years, e-commerce has been booming and will continue to boom. That growth over that last 20 plus years has been crazy. It's been astronomical. As your slide says, exponential. In 1999, global e-commerce amounted to $150 billion. A big number, but less than 1% of global GDP. By 2017, global e-commerce transactions were generating around 2.4 billion. That represented almost 11% of total retail sales, whether online or bricks and mortar. In 2023, it's expected to reach $6.5 trillion and represent 22% of total retail sales. Now, I think we all see through this current crisis of the last 4 or 5 months, we're seeing that exploding even further. Interestingly, again, over this last 20-year journey, I left that e-commerce or that .com startup company to work for quite some time for a PC manufacturer. And I remember in 2005 when laptops eclipsed desktop sales, desktop tower PC sales. And then shortly afterwards, mobile access to the internet, and in many cases, our mobile devices are more powerful than our laptops and our PCs today. Hence the reason we're seeing a significant growth of mobile transactions. I don't know what the statistic is, but I'm sure you can all comment that we probably look at our mobiles once every 10 seconds, and more of our transactions, our purchases, our life is actually on the mobile. I was quite surprised with this figure that the mobile merchants saw in the last 12 months 3 billion online sessions. I actually thought it would be more than that. 3 billion is an astronomical number, but I thought it actually would be more. So you can see that, people's expectations are at different levels, but there's one clear thing, is that mobile shopping and accessing and living our lives is only going to continue to grow. So e-commerce in a mobile platform will only continue to grow. Many people consider it to be a revolution. And that shift from retail to e-tail is continuing. It's been going on for quite some time. In the last 2 years, that shift has accelerated. And by 2022, some of these brands and even more that also play in the fashion industry, we expect to grow to just over 700 billion. Interestingly, in looking at the value of these companies, Amazon started in 1994. In 2016, the value is around 350 billion. Today, 1.25 trillion. So in 4 years, Amazon has quadrupled its value. They're a significant user of digital garment decoration technologies. They're a significant player in the market of fashion, clothing, apparel. So Walmart, similar value, have still experienced growth and still moving their business much more online, but the growth is more modest at 15% over that 4-year period. So this growth and revolution in e-commerce, of which the leaders that we all know in this market online, is changing the kind of the world that we all grew up with, that certainly I grew up with. And it's, I've seen over the last 10 years the change of the high street, the bricks and mortar world that we all grew up with, changed beyond belief. And the brands that we all know and grew up with are kind of almost no more on the high street. You can see, I'll scroll through a number of different very major brands. A lot of these US centric that are changing and disappearing. Very much we can certainly call it a bit of a meltdown on the high street, which was not the cause of COVID-19, but certainly it's recognized, it's there. There's, you know, what is the function going to be of our high streets with so many stores closing? And we've seen that certainly in the UK. We've seen that in 2017, some 6,000 stores closed. And also, I think it's forecasted in the next 12 months, a further 10,000 will expect to close. And why is that? Well, if you look at the growth of the category of population we have today, the Millennials, the Generation Z, there's three key factors that are changing that industry. So I'll touch on those three key factors. But the Millennials, the Generation Z, are people that have grown up as digital natives. They largely have not known a time when they didn't know the internet. Certainly not known a time when there was living a life without social media. So this changes how they're wired. Obvious, I'm sure. But they're creators of personalization. They demand a personalized experience online and in life. Deloitte estimate that the global personalized product market worth more than 31 billion by 2021, which is actually a 55% growth since 2016. That's not just fashion, that's all personalized products. Personally, I think 31 billion is a conservative estimate. They value experience over ownership. Now, social media today is a very visible accountability. The community of people, of Millennials and Generation Z, are much more socially responsible. Now, exposure is accountability, and social media, to a large degree, keeps us all accountable. Look at some of the things that have happened in the world in the last few months. It keeps us accountable, not just on shopping, but also then on the environmental aspects of the world as well. Also, the Millennials and Gen Z are omnichannel shoppers. My generation grew up as one channel shopper with bricks and mortar. Then over the last 20 years, we've changed. The Generation Z, Millennials are omnichannel by pure nature. This has led to a significant change in terms of how should brands influence shoppers today? How should brands influence its customers today? A phrase, glocalization. I have to say I'm not really keen on this phrase, but it's clear what it means is that, you know, global brands with local flavors. And actually, anyone today can become that celebrity. Anyone today can become that global brand. What was once reserved for a few, now can have a very quickly a large following, become relevant, whether it's in music, sports, or whether it's just from a hobby. A good example of this is one that I personally follow in terms of a fitness regime that I'm interested in, which was kind of jumping rope. A guy, he was actually an accountant who had a real interest in a different form of cardio, and started a movement online that today has only got 70,000 followers worldwide, which relative to others is small, but actually has a global brand. It's now a garment, lifestyle, fitness brand. So it just shows from a very small following, from a passion, you can have a global brand of which really established non-digital brands need to look at how do they leverage that? How do they influence the online community? How do they become more relatable to their consumer base? Whether your influencer's largest following lives on Instagram or the YouTube channel, more and more social media platforms are allowing their community members to shop directly without ever leaving the platform. Actually, that is their strategy. How do they now have a platform of where users and members can do everything they need to do in that platform? And so brands have to localize accordingly. I think we have to recognize that these platforms today are now obvious, the digital high street, because it drives behavior in fashion very differently. Actually, through all of these different types of brand and followings, the seasonality not only becomes shorter, but becomes less cyclical. Because brands are driving, those local brands, the one person I kind of reference, they're driving their own seasonality. So it becomes much more about on demand rather than demand and supply. Brands see a much tougher job of creating loyalty due to this fragmentation. So we have to look at how do we change that seasonality? How do we cope with different trends and curves of seasonality out there? Pressure from consumers also will look at how do they buy ethically sourced and green manufacturing materials. We're seeing that more and more. So all of that is kind of brings us kind of up to date, really, not even thinking about how is the digital world coping through COVID-19. So now let's look at actually still in it and after it. It's probably going to very much touch on while we're still in it, really, because we're not really after COVID-19 just yet. But according to Capgemini Research Institute, they did a survey of around 11,000 consumers worldwide, conducted in early April, so very much at the height of the panic and the crisis point of when the appetite for shopping was never bigger. They saw that 53% of those companies were looking for people who embody a sense of purpose and had strong sustainability credentials online. We saw the accelerated shift to e-commerce. We saw that actually through that, people that were already buying online, the focus was on the essentials, the ones that were already buying online, that grew significantly. And a large percentage of those that did even more online saw that actually it was a good experience. Being in lockdown gave them time to do lots of other things and hobbies, as we're seeing them all the time now. And therefore, this route is a route that they like and will stay with. During full lockdown, focus was on the essentials. You can probably remember the top 3 things that people focused on, from toilet rolls, from bread makers. Certainly, I think also gym and fitness equipment was up there as well. And those were what went into a real focus and crisis mode of being able to supply that globally to consumers. But reports indicate that all major e-commerce categories and actually all major product categories are recovering back to higher levels. So pretty clear that a digital customer experience is a wise investment for your business. So when was the best time to go digital? Well, it was over 20 years ago. And when's the next best time to go digital? Well, that's digital of some part. So maybe 5% look at, again, if you're not a digital native business today, how do you become? So 3 stages to become digital. And actually, 22 years ago, when I was in this .com startup, we had 3 phrases back then. It's not the same as today, but I'll share them with you. They were think big, start small, and move fast. People had some crazy ideas that actually today are very successful, mature businesses. But think big, start small, move fast is actually today should be stop. Stage 1 should be stop, and that's very difficult, but actually we didn't have a choice 2 months ago. Speed was a relevant currency of actually how do we manage through the crisis. But it gave us a time, hopefully, to stop and look at our business, to plan strategically ahead through what is almost every industry changing, some so much more than others. A fashion market, a garment market, you think of what everybody knows in terms of the wastage and sustainability. So hopefully we stopped and organized around the chaos. Extremely important then was to simplify, to look at every facet of the business and what's not digital that can become digital, to change it. Really interesting article I posted yesterday looking at all of those different touch points of supply chain, ERP, logistics. How do we make them digital to strengthen them as a business? And then to speed up is about creating digital born products. We're in an unusual situation still, and certainly still in the UK, to bring a mandate to digitize and become digital. And it serves as a blank canvas to spark innovation. We've seen so much innovation through this crisis that hopefully that continues and not just goes back to the old norm, but stays with the new norm. And innovative brands are likely to focus in the fashion markets on digital fit technology. We started to see more and more of them, virtual fitting rooms, artificial intelligence powered virtual shopping. So AI powered shopping assistants will help consumers tailor and select the size and look most closely aligned to their tastes and preferences. Expect voice powered shopping, visual search, and smart speakers that could offer brands intimate touch points with their customers. All really exciting things to change the digital experience of purchase activated apparel. And that's really where we should be moving to. For as long as I can remember, maybe, through the Industrial Revolution, we'd have been a supply and demand culture. We need to switch from this legacy business model. That's essential. The time to build the next generation of business models is now. This is the time to challenge those legacy conventions, train for new leadership, new expertise, and innovate across all of the business. Now, even though e-commerce is now focused on digital shopping, this isn't just the shopping experience. There's a need for total integrated and seamless digital supply chain that meets the needs and expectations of the evolved customer, with a speed to market, using sustainable practices, and enabling the self-expression that consumers demand today. I'll show you one example of one of our customers that has achieved that. They've achieved purchase activated apparel. Hope you enjoy the video. And that's the end of my short presentation. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm sorry if you couldn't hear the sound on the video, but hopefully the message came across.